Alcohol's worst side effects are so obvious, aren't they? The hangovers, the things you can't remember, the impact on your appearance, the cost, the shame, the health risks. You know all that stuff. But have you realised what else alcohol is doing to you? What if I told you that drinking is making your life harder in ways you might not have even noticed? So not in dramatic rock bottom ways. I'm talking not about the cliched stuff that you'd see in a movie if the main character has a drinking problem. I'm talking about the small, relentless, tedious, life-sucking, soul-destroying thing that alcohol does to you very quietly but very persistently. I want to talk about that because I know that when I was struggling with alcohol myself, I just didn't see this stuff. I couldn't see it until I was out the other side, until I'd actually quit. Then I looked back and thought, wow, I didn't even realize alcohol was doing that to me, but it was. So what kind of stuff am I talking about? Well, here's an example. Have you noticed that alcohol is forcing you to do a lot of acting? And it's exhausting because that is not your job. You were not at the Oscars last week, but maybe you should have been, because if you're a regular drinker, you have to be a great actress to put on a bright, breezy performance at work whilst feeling rough. Take it from me, it requires a lot of you to put on that I'm totally fine and I've got this vibe when you are consumed with guilt about how much you've been drinking and you are ruminating on what happened the night before. Alcohol is forcing you to take an unpaid acting job as you drink and keep the rest of your life looking okay on the outside. And do you know what else it quietly does? Drinking forces you to take on a huge extra mental load as well. Like, as if it's not enough for you to be running a household, looking after a family, juggling work and other commitments. Now you are also burdened with the mental load of managing your drinking, which is like this whole separate side hustle. It's like another job. You've got to manage your supplies. You've got to make sure that you have enough alcohol available at home, but not so much that it's noticeable or you go overboard. You've got to time your drinks so that no one else realises that you started earlier. You've got to stash bottles where they're not going to be found. You've got to figure out how to get rid of those empties discreetly. How to come up with reasons that you can't drive so you can just drink instead. Oh my goodness, it all takes up so much mental space. If you feel tired and overwhelmed a lot of the time, this is probably why. And do you know what else alcohol quietly does to you? It makes you paranoid. You worry that offhand jokey comment about drinking that your friend made, that was aimed at you. Has someone else noticed? Can they smell it on you? Do they know? Personally, I used to avoid going to the same shop too often because I was worried that the person at the till might have noticed how much I was buying. So I very carefully rotated between different stores just in case, which was another thing I had to think about. Perhaps you've borrowed a drink from someone else's stash and then you had to go and remember to replace it with the exact same brand just to avoid any suspicion. It is all extra mental weight and it really adds up. Here's another thing that alcohol does very quietly. It disconnects you from the people who really matter. I bet there is a point in the evening when you will always avoid answering the phone to certain people because you just don't want to get caught sounding drunk. So that means there's a whole conversation with your daughter or your sister or your friend that just doesn't happen. Personally, I remember being invited to parties, but if it was on a Friday and it had been a long week and I didn't really want to have to drink in a restrained, behaved way with other people, and I wanted to drink as much as I wanted to drink, I would then decline the invite so I could stay in with my bottles alone. Here's another thing that alcohol is quietly doing that you might not have even noticed. It makes you feel as if you are constantly behind, constantly running to catch up. You literally are in go slow mode. You've got this brain fog and you are not firing on all cylinders. You probably haven't slept properly, so you push tasks to one side, you feel too tired to focus, and maybe you promise yourself that you'll deal with it later or tomorrow. It all contributes to this draining feeling of never catching up, never really being on top of things, and not making good use of your time or your energy or your life. If you are a regular drinker, alcohol will be very quietly doing this stuff in the background, just discreetly setting up these problems that make your life harder to deal with. And then, because life is harder, you want to drink even more. But you might not be able to see that whilst you're still drinking, whilst you're still in all of this, whilst you're still in the thick of things. And that's kind of what prompted me to record this video, because so much of what alcohol does to you, the real, true impact of your drinking, you don't even notice until you've stepped back and you're free from it. Now, I've mentioned only 5 things in this video. I could talk about this topic for days, and I bet even then I'd miss out on some stuff. So go and let me know in the comments, what would you add to this list? What are the small, tedious, boring, soul-sucking ways that alcohol makes your life harder? I know this seems like a really negative subject to dwell on, but my goodness, is it important? Because if you're going to choose to continue drinking, then you want to have your eyes open and just be like totally okay with the consequences. You want to know what they all are really clearly and be fine with it. Because we all do stuff that has negative consequences. But personally, for me, the side effects of drinking were just too much, too painful. There were too many downsides. And I am so glad to be a non-drinker now.